Sales leaders, founders, owners think if they hire an experienced sales professional, that will fix the problem. And when I get that phone call from those individuals saying, hey, can you come in and talk to my sales team? I think I may have mishired. The first thing I say to them is, I'm happy to do that after I look at your processes, because there's a chance that you set them up to fail. Good salespeople can't outsell a bad product or half-baked or non-existent processes.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Transform Sales Podcast. Today, I am so delighted to have Kristy Jones. How are you, Kristy?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Let me tell you a bit about Kristy. She is the author of Sell Your Way In, a speaker, coach, and sales consultant, helping companies drive more revenue from their sales and customer success teams. Kristy is a go-to-market expert for companies needing to build or improve their sales process, strategy, and people. She is known for her willingness to get her hands dirty and a take-no-prisoners approach when helping companies drive more revenue. She is also passionate about ensuring companies have top talent and sales accountability culture to ensure revenue growth. All right, take no prisoners. Tell us about that, Kristy.
You know, Wesleyan, you know I don't take any prisoners. No, I have a very direct communication style for those who need the softer version of that. But yeah, I mean, again, I don't think I can be helpful if I can't be honest. And sometimes the baby's ugly. I mean, sometimes a pink bow just won't do.
So unpack that for us a little bit. When you say sometimes a baby is ugly, and I don't do ugly babies. I let people know their babies are ugly. What does an ugly baby look like in the context of business?
I think a few things. One, broken or underbaked products. So, not keeping up with the industry, the competition. So I call it half-baked. So, either broken or half-baked product is, not necessarily fixable with a pink bow until you get it where it needs to be. I think broken processes or, unformalized, undocumented processes can't be fixed with a pink bow. I think a lot of times sales leaders, founders, owners think if they hire an experienced sales professional, that will fix the problem. And when I get that phone call from those individuals saying, hey, can you come in and talk to my sales team? I think I may have mishired. The first thing I say to them is, I'm happy to do that after I look at your processes, because there's a chance that you set them up to fail.
I love that. And, the thing that I really like that you highlighted is a lot of times people are saying, oh, I have a problem with sales. Our numbers are low. Our people are bad. But you could have a crappy product. Like, are you giving them something good to sell? And then are you giving them what they need to actually succeed? Like, you want people to sell a crappy product and you're not giving them any kind of process. You're just like, go do it. And then you complain about them.
Yeah. I mean, again, good salespeople can't outsell a bad product or half-baked or non-existent processes. So, I think one of the things that we have failed to do in the last several years as sales leaders is provide soft skills sales training. And so I think I see a lot of companies, what I'll call successful in spite of themselves. And if you have a really great product, you can it takes a little bit of time for those things to come to the surface where you don't really have good formal processes in place. You haven't been providing soft skills training. And so that's going to catch up. And I think the thing that I'm most concerned about, I'm starting to get on my soapbox about the following, is that the sales professionals that we are not training today are tomorrow's sales leaders that won't be able to train their sales professionals. And so I think this problem is going to exacerbate. I think it's going to get worse because we love, particularly in SaaS, Wesleyan, I live in the SaaS world. In SaaS, we love to promote the top performer. Love to do that. And if we have not properly trained the top performer, and a lot of top performers don't know why they're successful. If you say to them, what are the top 5 things that you're doing that are setting you apart from the other 90%? If you're a top 10%er, they don't know. They can't always articulate it. Some of it is just natural ability, and some of it is just charisma, or people like them. But then we promote them to the sales leader, and then we expect them to take their team to the next level and be able to onboard new reps. But we haven't we stopped properly training sales professionals a while ago, and we're letting automation and AI and all of these we're letting tools. We're trying to manage things through tools, so that's the science. But we've given up on the art. We're not teaching people the art of sales anymore.
So roll us back to your career. So how did you really get into this world of sales? How did you learn what you learned and want to and took that to really impact the world?
Yeah, I affectionately say I got my MBA at the kitchen table. My parents owned a real estate company. We had a real estate franchise, a Coldwell Banker franchise, and my mother was a top agent in town, and my dad was the owner broker. And so our dinner table conversations revolved around out of town buyers, commission checks, listings, sellers, the whole bit. And so my brother is a very successful individual contributor. I took my dad's sales leadership path. But so first off, it was organic. Like we were thrown into that world. It was a family business. My dad's brother had started it, and then we became partners, and then he retired and my dad took over. So I think that was a lot of it. I said my very first sales job is still my favorite sales job to this day, was waiting tables. And so I
Mm.
spent 8 years, about 7 years waiting tables through high school and college. And, that taught me a lot of sales skills, persuasion,
Mm.
objection handling, suggestions, becoming a consultant. I mean, people expect their, you know, wait staff to be consultants and to help guide them into what they should be ordering off of the menu with so many things to choose from. And then after college, I went into retail sales. So I was a buyer for a major department store, and I did that for several years. And then after, I would say, 8 years out of college, so I was in retail for 8 years out of college, and then I got my first SaaS job. But I'm so old, we called it subscription model back then. And then I took that and I ran with that until 2016 when I started my own business. So in 2016, I thought I'd fallen into the startup space. So VC backed companies, fast paced, smart people, pressure because VCs want their money back at some point. And so I thought, you know what, I can be doing this for a lot of different companies, not just one company at a time. I love sales leadership, but I also love the startup space. And so through a series of things that I won't go into today, but I do go into in my book, I fell into a situation where I was being offered kind of a short term and not that many hours a week consulting gig, and then a couple other things happened. And in 2016, I decided to step out of the W-2 world, as I call it, and into the 1099 world. And so I've been
Okay.
helping startups and founders, and building out processes, playbooks, hiring the right people for those type of companies for 8 years now.
Wow. Wow. So I want to kind of go back to the beginning, the kitchen table MBA. And I want to ask you, from your mom and from your dad, what is one lesson that they taught you as a child in sales and business that you still use today?
I think they inadvertently taught us through modeling work ethic. The real estate business
Mm.
sucks. Like it's hard, right? I mean, there were years or months my dad didn't take a paycheck so he could make payroll for his employees. There were times when my mother wasn't earning commission because nobody was buying and nobody was selling. But when the business was good, when the industry was good, when the market was good, those were 60, 70-hour work weeks, right? And so,
Mm.
I think, that was something that we talked a lot about, but it was modeled. And so
Yeah.
we definitely, my brother and I both understood that hard work pays off. And sometimes you don't need to be, my dad would admittedly say, and my uncle says this all the time. He's like, yeah, I barely got through college, right? Like maybe not the smartest people in the room. Now, my mother was not that person. She was one of the smartest people in the room, but they outwork their competition, right? And so sometimes you
Mm.
just have to be willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing that was really more sales related was not judging a book by its cover.
Hmm.
My dad was quick to say, don't assume anything by how people spend their money. Some people like
Hmm.
cars, some people want a nice
Yes.
house, some people want to take really extravagant vacations, and you can't look at any of those things and make a determination about what people make or how people operate, what goes on behind closed doors.
Mm.
So he was on a never judge a book by its cover program.
Ooh, wow. Those are some really good lessons. I like that last one because I often tell people, I choose to spend my money differently than other people. So you may look at me and be like, oh my gosh, you have this, and that. I'm like, I really didn't make that much more than other people. I just chose to eat at home and save my
Right.
money and buy less expensive cars, right? Because I like to travel and I like a nice home. And as salespeople, sometimes we bring those biases into the sales environment, and it
We do.
impacts the way that we sell. It impacts the way that we show up to our customers because of
Mhm.
our own inherent biases that we don't even realize exist.
Yeah, I see it all the time. And I say this to folks. I go, hey, listen, this is not your money, right? Like this is their money. And sometimes you'll give into price or you'll offer a term, or a payment plan. And I was like, did they tell you they needed that? Well, no,
Mm-hmm.
but they were hesitating. And I said, well, then you filled in the blank for them that probably wasn't there. But,
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because money is one of those things that I say everybody would be better off if we were comfortable talking openly about what we were making, what we were charging, how we
Yeah.
do, how we manage our money, because a lot of parents can't teach that because they don't have good money management skills. The schools aren't
Yeah.
teaching that. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
nowhere where we're getting that education. And then, like you said, we're taking those biases of, I would never spend money under that
Yeah.
circumstance. Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, if I was Mr. or Mrs. Prospect and this was my circumstance, I'm not sure I'd spend $27,000 on this piece of software. So you're bringing your
Yeah.
own biases in. And I think part of that's just we as a nation and a society being uncomfortable with having open, honest financial conversations and transparent.
Absolutely. And you got your MBA at the kitchen table from your parents, and I got mine, I would say, from my dad in our drives to school. He has a doctorate in applied economics. And
Oh,
so
gee.
I got a lot of lessons about money and how it works. And we talked about it so openly. So I'm like, so when I talk to people about it, I'm like, yeah, this is how much this costs, this is how much I make, this is how I pay debt off. Like, I don't have a problem talking about that.
Mhm.
And that served me well when I got into sales because I would hear large amounts, like 2 or 3 times how much I made. And I'm asking a customer to give me that, and it wouldn't bother me because I had those early lessons and I passed that on to my children.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's really important. And like you were talking about, this next generation of salespeople, sales leader, how do we normalize these conversations around money? How do we not make it like, oh my gosh, I'm scared to ask for $30,000 and no discounting? Like, I've never made that much in my life. How can I ask a person for that? Like, that is an inherent thing that us as sales professionals, we have to become more comfortable with.
We do. Yeah, and again, like everything, again, everything goes back to childhood, right? And you had a very interesting upbringing as well. And because I know you talk to people like I talk to people, people don't get it. I mean, my friends very frequently say to me, "We didn't grow up like you grew up." Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I get frustrated with people when they won't share things or they're uncomfortable with certain conversations. And my friends continually remind me, "We didn't get our MBA at the kitchen table. Like our parents didn't talk about that."
Yeah.
And so, and again, like you said, I'm also passing that. I'm very transparent about money with my son as a
Yeah.
result, because I don't want him to have that same bias or that same, fear about understanding how we make it, we save it, we get more. I
Yeah.
want him to know. I don't want it to be a taboo topic.
And I think it's even like that ask, right? So in sales, and you were talking about, I kind of call it the pregnant pause, and salespeople wanting to fill that gap with whatever's in their brain. I'm like, let people think. Just allow them to marinate a little bit. And in teaching, our salespeople and teaching people in general how to advocate for themselves, how to negotiate, right? These are human skills. These are skills that we use when we're talking to our loved ones, to our friends, to our families. And what most people don't realize, I'm like, you bring your whole self to work. So when you're having trouble talking to your spouse about, hey, I want to get my car fixed, but it costs this much money, and you're beating around the bush, when you start having that uncomfortable conversation with a prospect about them needing to pay extra for this upgrade, you
Yep.
bring all of those biases with you to your sales situation.
Yeah. I say never leave price hanging. I say the price with confidence, go 1, 2, 3. How does that compare to what you thought you might hear? How does
Mm-hmm.
that compare to your budget? How does that compare to
Yep.
the competitor you're talking to? Like use an open-ended how word, right? How or what,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
But never let it hang, because there's no reason. Like they're gonna have it'll take them 3 seconds to have a reaction. It doesn't take that long to have a
Mm-hmm.
reaction to the price you just gave. And again, move them forward or move them out. I don't want to
Yep.
waste my time. I don't
Oh
need
my
maybe.
God.
My second favorite
Mm-mm.
word is no. So, and I'd rather hear it early and often. So,
Yes.
if I throw a price out and, and then if people are still sitting on their chair, then I'm like, okay, cool. But, and I think the way you say it too, like I had this happen. I lost a deal recently, and in fairness, it doesn't happen to me very often. So it's sticking with me. But I had a former client who wanted me to come in and do a day-long training out of town for his SKO, and I have a rate for that. And I'm unapologetic about it. And, I threw out the price, and he wasn't on that call. His VP of sales was. And then he sent me an email within 24 hours and just said, that's way out of budget. And I was like, that's fine. But I wish I had had an opportunity, in hindsight. I don't normally push back hard on these type of things. But in hindsight, my day rate was less than half of his average sale. So one thing I said over an 8-hour period caused them to sell half a deal. Then he broke even on me. And if he got one more deal, then he made money on me. I think people get caught up, and I think, it's always, again, I wish he'd been on the call. She didn't react, right? So she didn't react at all in a negative way. So I thought that number was going to float. And a bit, by the way, it's, it's what you would charge. It's what anybody else would charge, right? It's the going rate. I'm not trying to scalp anybody. But it was an interesting, short-sighted decision from a CEO. He wasn't the VP of sales, but the CEO. But we have to, like, that's why I always want to throw a price out in person so I can see that reaction, and then I can, and again, object handle if need be. Not having that opportunity to do that. I think those are just some best practices, right? Like, she was definitely a high-level influencer, but not the decision maker. And he and I have a good relationship. I said he was a former client, but yeah, and it's funny because I very rarely don't get the deal on price, which probably not charging enough. But in this case, I knew I was charging enough.
Yeah. I had an actual interesting, I guess we both started off this period of time in the same boat, because I had somebody who also said no. And I would say it's probably based on price. And when they came back to me, they said, well, you're double what everybody else we've spoken to is charging. And I'm like, because I'm 10 times as good as them. Like, the thing is, when that person was going out to the market and asking for what they needed, they were getting a fraction of it. I was solving their comprehensive problem, not just a little piece. And when they told me that, I literally said, I understand that, but I don't work like other people work. I'm not a typical consultant. I'm doing this with you and for you. I'm not just telling you to do a bunch of stuff and then you go figure it out yourself. So yeah,
Right.
that requires me, that requires my team, but I didn't budge on price. And literally my motto for this year is every closed door opens a bigger one. So I'm not worried about it. And the thing is, by not getting that deal, or by not getting that SKO, like, that you didn't get, it opens your time, it opens your brain span, it opens everything up for you to do something bigger, better, and that's more aligned for you.
And honestly, I felt the same way. Honestly, it was going to add a little more pressure to my life because they were down to the wire. Like, I was going to have about 2 weeks to get it pulled together, and that would have required my nights and weekends. And so I'm going to get that time back to work on the keynote that I have at the end of the month instead.
Oh, see, and that's the thing. It's the balance. And so even when we're in a company and we're in these sales situations and you're like, oh man, I lost that deal. I worked on it for so long and I thought I was going to get it. I always like to triage these deals, right? Like, so when I lose business, because hey, we teach people to sell for a living, but we still lose business. I mean, if we have 100%, I believe if I have 100% close rate, I'm not charging enough. I'm not going after a risky market. Like, everybody shouldn't love what's sling. And so when I lose a deal, I triage it, right? Like, I'm like, what could I have done differently? Was this the right kind of person? Did I offer them the right product? Like, so when you're in those spaces and you're like, okay, so I lost this deal. It might be on price. It might not be. How do you work through that?
Yeah. I think in this case, I felt really like, I think other times I've been more frustrated. And in this case, I wasn't. First off, there's a supply and demand issue, right? I mean, you're asking me, initially they had put the date out to the third week in February. And then at the last minute, they changed the date to the last week in January. So right there, I was like, well, I mean, I actually didn't charge more. My first reaction was to charge 20% more than I was thinking about charging, because that was going to cause me to take my personal time. I was going to have to use my personal time in order to make this work for them and for me. And really, I thought it was a value issue. I think I picked, we talked through, we had plenty of conversation. He reached out to me. I didn't reach out to him. I came up with 3 great topics that I was going to teach over 8 hours. I said, based on my prior experience with you, I believe these are the gaps that the team, and that could be filled. and could get you off, get you started to up onto a good year. I think the mistake I made is not having given a range early on. And I think because we'd worked together before that I didn't need to do that. And I think there was the mistake that I made in saying, hey, just so we're level set, my day rate for something like this is somewhere between here and here, depending on how many topics I'm going to need to train on and all of those things. Had I done that, neither of us would have wasted the time that we wasted. So, I think it wasn't I was afraid to throw out price. I just already thought based on our prior relationship that the number I was going to throw out wasn't going to scare him.
And so one of the things that I really want to highlight here is that anyone who's listening to this podcast should take a page out of Kristy and I's book. And I love saying it's okay to lose a deal. It's okay to lose business, but it's not okay to lose the same way twice. And
right.
The onus is on us as salespeople. The onus is on us to figure out what we can do differently. And there's always something we can tweak. There's always something that we can do a little bit differently. So the next time we don't fall into that same place of I lost a deal because of this. And a lot of things that I see happening in the world of sales is nobody wants to take responsibility or accountability. They make excuses. Oh, it was the customer's fault. Oh, it was this, it was that, it was that. And that just irks me because I'm like, I need you to be an adult and take responsibility for what you did. Yeah, the customer did something wrong. The prospect did something wrong. But what did you do in that situation?
That's right. Yeah. And I think that's it. And I'm normally, again, under a circumstance where it's a newer, it's somebody I haven't worked with in the past, I always put that, it's a delicate balance as to how quickly you want to throw out the price, right? But I always put it out there as a range early on because I don't want to have a second, I normally will do a 2 discovery call process. So the second discovery call is when we get into the nitty gritty, but I'm not going to end that first discovery call without giving a range because I don't want to waste my time on a second discovery call only to find out we're not in sync financially. So yeah, I mean, I think that was that was the lesson learned because even though I had worked for him previously, he paid me differently for a different, service. And so who knows what, I made the assumption that if that was what we'd agreed on before, that this wouldn't be a problem. That again, the assumption part, right? Just ask an open-ended question.
I love it. I love it. So you have been in this world of entrepreneurship for 8 years and you have written a book, Selling Your Way In. So tell us about Sell Your Way In.
Yeah, I'm very excited. This is coming out in August. And I didn't want to write a how-to book. Leslie, there's, if you need to know how to, run a demo or negotiate a deal or whatever, there's all of that, all of that exists in the marketplace. But I got tired of walking into companies and seeing sales professionals in the wrong seat on the bus. And a lot of times they put themselves in the wrong seat on the bus. And so I think sales professionals are leaving somewhere between $1 and $10 million over their lifetime on the table because they've chosen the wrong sales role in the wrong industry, selling the wrong product or service, working for the wrong companies, working for the wrong bosses, sales leaders. And so I think, the book is divided into 3 sections. And section number 1 says you have to know yourself before you can know the prospect. Woo. And so I really force sales professionals who read the book to look at themselves and say, and it's not just about hunter farmer. Like, I don't know that everybody truly understands all the different sales opportunities that are out there. And if you find the one that fits your superpowers and your secret weapons the best, then you're going to be able to maximize your income and get to that top 10%. But, nobody talks sometimes about, implementation specialists or sales engineers or solution consultants. Do you want to do B2C or B2B? Do you want to be inside? Do you need to be face-to-face? Do you want to sell a product? Do you want to sell a service? What type of industry? Who do you want to talk to every day? Buyer personas run the gamut. Do you do better with 50-year-old women than 30-year-old men? There's so many factors, and I don't think people are stopping to take time. I always use this as my sassy Kristy statement, but how'd you get into sales? Oh, I was at Thanksgiving several years ago, and Uncle Bob is like, you need to go into sales. Right. And that, I read a statistic the other day, 67% of sales professionals never intended to be in sales. Right. The accidental, I think there's a book called The Accidental Salesperson.
Accidental Sales. Yep.
And that's real. Right. And so not only are sales professionals accidentally falling into sales, they're not even like, they're just falling into sales with the first situation that comes their way.
Yeah.
And then, but you're not taking time to go, what about this? What do I like? I think we lose sales professionals as well because they pick the wrong sales job for themselves. And I also, I'm going to put some accountability on the sales leadership side here too, right? I mean, there are times when I interview people and I just say to them, like, I hate to break this to you, but you're not a hunter. They're like, huh? I'm like, you're interviewing for a hunter job. I go, you love the relationship. Every answer you've given me is, I love to build the relationship and grow the account. And whatever. I go, that's not this job. Like you're about to put yourself in the wrong job, and you're gonna either quit or be fired, and you're gonna be miserable every day. You're gonna get up not wanting to go to work every day. And so I really wanted to write a book. Like the subtitle of the book is, so selling your way in, the playbook for setting your income and owning your life. And I believe if you put yourself in the right spot, you can set your own income. And then you can spend that money however you want. You can, be as successful as you want to be. Top 10%, they get more in base salary. They get better variable deals. They're not only getting to 64% of quota, they're getting to 94 or 104% of quota. So they're of course going to make more money. But I think the people that really know themselves and understand, this is my other big Christyism here. The work to get to the top doesn't happen at work. Top 10%ers in any industry and field spend time outside of 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, working on themselves, right? Spiritually, mentally, physically, they're getting 8 hours of sleep, not 5. They're exercising 5 times a week, not 0. They're reading a business book instead of watching The Bachelor. Top 10%ers are just doing things differently. And so it's discipline and desire, right? Do you have the discipline and the desire to make 3 more million than you're on track to make today? These are choices.
Wow. Like this book, it sounds so amazing. I'm like eating it all up. And it's so many of the things that I know are so important, right? Like there's so many people out here struggling in the world of SaaS or struggling in the world of commission only sales, doing insurance or real estate or all of these things. And they're like, I'm not good at this. I can't do this job. And because that's all they know, they're like, I'm going back to what I did before. I'm going back to where I was before. And I'm an advocate for nobody teaches people the how. They just teach them the what, the why, but it's like the how. And so you're giving people the building blocks. You're actually giving them the playbook to understand what they need to do to be at that top tier, to feel fulfilled. And it's not just about making a lot of money. It's, do I love what I do? Right. Like I literally was telling people I do this look back to look forward every year. And I was telling my my best friend, who's my accountability partner, she was like, okay, so what kind of business did you have last year? What kind of clients did you work with last year that you didn't really enjoy? I said, I have none, because Wesleyan finally learned how to say no to bad business. And I absolutely love every single person that I've worked with. I had no drama last year. And that's the thing. That should not be the exception to the rule. That should be the way that we exist, that we move, that salespeople love their job. They enjoy what they do. They're fulfilled financially, spiritually, and mentally. I'm excited.
Yes. Good. Yeah. I think this book will open some eyes. And I think there's a lot of people out there, sales professionals, who don't understand why they're not the top 10%. I always say, like, they're sitting next to Susan and they're like, I'm saying what Susan's saying, but how come I'm not making what Susan's making? How come I'm not hitting quota like Susan's hitting quota? Well, you don't know what Susan's doing outside of work. You only see what Susan's doing inside of work. I guarantee you that Susan's doing things outside of work that you're not, that are putting her in a different position, whether that be, again, her mindset, whether that be the skills that she has. And again, I think sales leaders are not providing enough soft skill sales training. And if you're not going out and getting that on your own, if you're not listening to podcasts and reading sales books and asking to attend, a seminar or a workshop, then shame on you. Like it is your sales leader's responsibility to provide that training. But if they are not, that doesn't abdicate you. Then it's not just, woe is me, I'm not getting that sales training. I mean, Wesleyan, the world, a lot of people have podcasts, Wesleyan, right? Like every time you get in the car, put on a sales podcast. There are a lot of podcasts out there, business and sales podcasts. There are great books. I mean, I've got 4 books in my Audible right now that I have not been able to get to. 10X is easier than 2X is the next one on my list. But like I'm hearing about great books all the time, and it's my responsibility to find time to read them. I
Yeah.
can't read so many I can't execute. But, but again, lifelong learners, those top 10 percenters are lifelong learners, right? You and I
Yeah.
already know that because we're lifelong learners, but people don't understand that that's their responsibility.
Yeah.
That's your responsibility to continue to grow and learn new things all the time.
I love it. I love it. I love it, Kristy. And you said it is going to be released in August.
August 20th.
So what can people do if they're interested in getting more information about the book or getting pre-release? What can they do?
Wayin.com. If you go and sign up at selling, then I will make sure. I just picked a book cover, so I just shared that with my inner circle. So those on the selling your way in list just got an advanced sneak peek at the book cover. So yeah, go sign up, and I'll keep you informed all along the way about everything that's going on.
Yes, yes, yes. I am so excited to read this book. I hope I get an advance copy so I can
I'm
review
sure I
it
can
and read it.
do
I would
one.
love to be able to share with the world all the amazing insights. I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited. And so before we wrap up, I want you to share with us, share an experience in your life or your career that has really impacted the way that you show up and lead. You shared about your parents, you shared about your early business lessons, but what would you say that thing is?
It was something that I didn't really, one of my superpowers that I didn't really acknowledge or know about till I got close to starting my own business. But I call it my universal superpower, is generosity. And so my
Mm,
motto is I have 30 minutes for everyone. And I really mean that. I'm hoping that someday I'll be so busy I might only have 15 minutes for you. But right now I still have 30 minutes for everyone. And people take me up on it, and I really want them to do that. I think, we hear a lot of like, no free consulting or whatever. I do it all the time, right? And I just think
yeah.
it's the right thing to do. I want to be available to people. And honestly, I think it's based on what I shared with you about my family situation growing up. I feel like I have a responsibility to share the things that other, children didn't learn growing up from their parents and weren't in a situation where their families owned a business. So to some extent, I feel like it's my responsibility to teach the world things that I know that maybe other
Yeah.
people have not had an opportunity to figure out yet. And so I
Mm,
think that's the, I think there were so many times when my dad, like as the owner and broker of that real estate firm, the phone rang all the time, right? Like
mm.
during Dukes of Hazzard in the middle of the week, and during, ER and West Wing and all the shows that we would watch together. Like, and he never didn't take the phone call, right? And it was just, and it didn't seem rude to me. It seemed like this was just what we did. This was his responsibility. But he also gave back. He also was on the board of Habitat for Humanity. He was on, he was a president of the Kansas Association of Realtors, and so was my mother. Those weren't financial, advantage positions. Those were basically
Yeah.
volunteerism. But they gave back to
Mm,
the real estate community because they believed in doing so. And so I feel the same way. I feel like I have a responsibility to, if I can help someone prep for the big interview, read their
yeah.
resume. I even say,
Mhm.
edit your Dear John email to a soon to be ex boyfriend. Uh, I'm happy to do all of that. So again, I want you to sign up to follow me on sellingyourwayin.com. But if you need something, I want you to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you've got a question about what you heard today or just something in general about the world that I live in, I'm happy to
Yeah.
help you.
Awesome. I love that servant heart, right? I have some, I literally say I have open calendar link. If you need something, here's my calendar link, right?
That's
And
right.
and the thing is, I believe the things that we put out into the world, they come back to us, right?
I
And
do.
I'm not expecting anything for what I do, but
Right.
I truly believe Kristy is a person of her word. If you need something, if you reach out and you ask her for something, she is more than willing to offer you her expertise, a listening ear, and that dear John. Yep, she really, yeah. I've seen one of those from her. So she is like you're all around. You need something, she got you.
I do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kristy. This has been an amazing time. Thank you for your time, your talent, and your expertise.
Thank you, Wesley. And I'm hoping to get to chat with you again soon.
Awesome. And that was another episode of the Transform Sales Podcast. Remember, in everything you do, transform your sales. Until next time.